Ladies and gentlemen, now we have two parallel sessions, one in track 1 and the other in track 2. The topic of the track 1 session is BFSI CISO holding guard against hackers. This session will be moderated by Ujaley, Senior Special Correspondent, ETGovernment. And the topic for the track 2 session is BFSI customizing for millennial and Gen Z, and this will be moderated by Moderator, editor, ETBFSI. I would request Ujaley and Amol to take over their respective sessions.
Hello and welcome to second edition of ETBFSI CXO Conclave 2020. In this special panel discussion focus on cyber security under the topic of holding guards against hackers, we will be discussing how cybersecurity leaders from the BFSI sectors are mitigating the challenge of COVID-19 and how they are providing enterprise-grade security in work-from-home environment. We will also be analyzing the learning of the last 8 months and how these lessons are impacting their future decision for building resilient cybersecurity infrastructure. To lead the discussion, today I am joined by Mr. Avez, CRO, SBI General Insurance, Mr. Vinay Tiwari, CISO, RBL Bank, Mr. KM Reddy, Head and CISO, Union Bank of India, Mr. Biju K, Head Operational Risk and CISO, Federal Bank, and Mr. Jyoti Prakash, Regional Sales Director, India at Splunk. Let me begin with Mr. Avez. Mr. Avez, what we are noticing that the COVID-19 pandemic over the last 8 months has really impacted various sectors. In that light, I would like to understand what is your broader assessment of cybersecurity, and has it added a new challenge?
So thank you so much, Ujaley. All my comments, all my views will be personal and nothing to do with my company. That's a caveat which I want to begin with. And that's this is the new normal which we will have to live around when we are talking about a very digital age. And I think digitally and technologically, we are all catapulted for the next 4 or 5 years. Whatever we plan that we might do in the next 4 or 5 years, digitally or technologically, we all companies are doing it and rushing it up in next 10, 14 months or next 1 year, or most of the companies must have already done it. So the pandemic have two sides, and being a ex-CISO of ICICI Lombard and now being in the role of CRO, I have to look at both the risk side and the opportunity side. And I think there is a risk side, but there is also an opportunity of leveraging a lot of pending works or leveraging a lot of softer side of cybersecurity management, the people side of cybersecurity management into the end core of the audience, into the organization. And people are now even appreciating the whole concept of operational risk management, business continuity management, cybersecurity management, data privacy. This entire subject which used to look alien to the nth person in an organization, right? It's now looking very familiar. If you talk to anyone, he'll give you a good content around business continuity, resilience. So people are very familiar with the subject now. So the good part what has happened is people are ready to participate into it. People are seeing it as a real risk, which can also impact them at a personal level. And they are ready to handshake with the organization and participate into whatever mock exercise we are trying to do. One additional thing which I want to bring to the notice of is incident management doctrine will also change with this entire pandemic. Earlier, the way we used to manage the incidents, that too will also go for a change because of the cybersecurity. The parameter has gone for a complete different tangent. There is no more a parameter. It's a complete open world for us. People are working from home. Companies are making different choices which they want. Some people are breaking the rules. Some people are still being conservative. If I want to talk about ourselves, we want to be fairly phygital. So we don't want to be completely digital. Being a brand, as we a brand, we want to have an element of physical presence as well as a digital presence. So we want to leverage it, and we are going only with a critical infrastructure to be more remote. The rest all operational part we want to be a bit conventional. So we'll go into the entire race bit conscious, because we don't want to be too flamboyant in taking risk in this particular space. And that's what I think. From a challenge point of view, I think I couldn't see any challenge in the whole 9 months period. We were a lot of companies, I think my peers will also agree, most of the companies were prepared, not thinking about a pandemic, but technologically our journey were very much mature collectively of the industry to take this entire scenario well. The only challenge I think must have been in terms of acquiring hardwares, if in case some people must have gone through those challenge of acquiring hardware, because the entire supply chain was disrupted. So because of the supply chain being disrupted, most of the companies must have faced challenge in acquiring hardware. Otherwise, I don't see much of the challenge, especially for us. We maintained a BAU even during the lockdown.
Right. Mr. Tiwari, I'll come to you. As Mr. Avez was saying that the pandemic has created, there has been a bit challenge, but it also has given an opportunity wherein the understanding of cybersecurities and the awareness about cybersecurity is a bit high. And some of the existing IT infrastructure, people were quite easily able to use it. And that's how actually they mitigated the challenge. Would you like to share your broader assessment of cybersecurity during the time of pandemic, and what kind of new learnings that you had?
Sure. So in addition to what was mentioned, actually it has led to a lot of awareness in terms of cybersecurity. Even the end users were quite critical in terms of accessing systems or getting awareness on the cybersecurity piece. So during pandemic, what has happened was it certainly came as an lockdown period. But since actually we were having certain engagements already with the key users on remote access perspective, be it on access via VDI or along with multi-factor authentication or so.
Right.
The challenge was enabling access to all the users, right? So getting bank up and running being an one of an important element during the pandemic, or which required actually access all the time for people. And so allowing those accesses and getting those people on board and working from home was quite challenging. And at the same time, it also made us CISOs to get more flexible with respect to policies, wherein I personally agree. So after speaking to our peers and even the key CISOs, most of them were quite flexible during pandemic situation. The risk appetite which they had earlier,
Right.
which had increased. So it not only gave us opportunity in terms of improving operationally, but also on a cost perspective. It also gave a certain advantage of implementing certain additional solutions which were required, which we were expecting that going forward, if there is work from home or maybe BYOD kind of environment, that will be implemented, right? So that was on a shorter notice. On OEM front, there were a lot of support, at least on a collaborative tools perspective. Whatever tools were available, people had extended hand in terms of giving access for 3 months or maybe 1 month or so that people get used to. And after realizing the benefits of these tools, actually people are now demanding access to dedicated access or full-time access to such tools and services, and allowing work from home remotely. But at the same time, it carries its own risk, the risk-reward ratio, if you see. So there are a lot of things which still requires improvement, specifically when it comes to collecting logs or carrying out the incident response or the monitoring mechanism while you're working from home, right? So those improvements were indeed required by the industry, and that was quite implemented.
Absolutely.
And you must be aware that there were a lot of attacks during those tenure, which started happening suddenly. Suddenly people started realizing there are zero-day attacks which are coming for the VDI tools or the tool VPN solutions which are already in place, right? So patching those or having those implemented remotely. So that's where automation actually helped us a lot.
Right.
So wherever there were automation, it was easy for us to get it worked actually remotely. So that's where we started working more. Yeah.
Yes. I'll come back to you again. Now I'll move to Mr. Reddy. Mr. Reddy, would you like to share your experience as to how you mitigated the challenge of pandemic from cybersecurity points of view?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question and a learning for everyone. You see, we are already facing the challenges in the cybersecurity due to lack of awareness and due to the adoption of new technology and all. In addition to that, it has given an opportunity to us to relook to our strategy and relook to our kind of recovery strategy, as well as our resilience mechanism. The whole the business continuity, how it is going. and it has given a good opportunity during this pandemic and post-pandemic. It has given a good mindset to the CISOs, how they can change the, kind of risk into a positive side, because business has to continue. And secondly, the security controls also quite non-negotiable and inseparable. So you have to continue with the, kind of same cyber security posture. At the same time, you have to also ensure that your organization is well protected with all the threats. So more or less in various forms actually. If I categorize it, it is in a three 3D. I can say it is a kind of 3D. The first and foremost is the data security, and the second is the digital transformation which has happened during this period, and the third one is the disruption. So a lot of disruption has happened in terms of business, in terms of technology, in terms of people, process, and everything. But broadly, if you look at as a CISO, the data security element has really, it has been changed. It's not synonymous as your you look at your system protection. It has enormously changed because the data has been moved from your bank to outside now.
Right.
Because when we have given the access to work from home, we have never ever experienced that kind of challenge. So this is the first time we have experienced, because the data has moved from the core to the edge, and edge to the cloud. Now the challenges are multifold, and this challenge is having a multifaceted challenge in terms of, now earlier we used to term as a know your employee, and today it has gone to know your business, know your apps, know your data, and know your environment, know your hygiene, and know your partners, and know your vendors. See, now it has given a very wide kind of thought, and earlier we were confined only the know your employer, know your customer. So today, since this pandemic has given a good learning for all of us to remain ourselves, our business continued smooth operations and all, we have to one is that we have to change our mindset. Risk mindset should be changed, and also at the same time we have to do a very what I said, that recovery strategies should be in place, and your resilience mechanism also should be in place, and you should well aware about your know your business, know your apps, and know your partners, know your vendors. All these things should be in place, and you have to relook at your strategy time to time, so that you can be easily operated your business.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Biju, Avez and Mr. Tiwari, both of them mentioned about that the awareness level during the pandemic has gone. And what Mr. KM Reddy was telling, that now the CISOs, the role of CISOs are not only limited to security. I mean, it is primarily ensuring security, obviously first, but at the same time, you have to have a broader understanding of different business functions, because the pandemic, and especially when people are working from home, I mean, you are actually providing access to your data at different places at the edge. That means your security level has to go up. In that light, I would like to understand how has been your experience over the last 8-9 months, and how did you mitigate the challenge of pandemic, sir?
Yeah, hi everyone. So the pandemic has taught all of us very great lessons. So before last December, the pandemic word was there in everyone's business continuity management policy. So it was there in the policy, but none of us had experienced that, and no one did the testing in that line. But the COVID pandemic made all of us to learn how to face a pandemic and how to ensure business as usual even in the time of a pandemic. As we all know, banks are no regulated entities, and we have to ensure that business continues as usual in spite of whether it is a natural calamity or other technology-related disruption. So we all need to have adequate business continuity plans and preparations in place. So we also had have these kind of arrangements in this place already in place, and we normally do conduct periodic testing to ensure that our systems are up and running even in case of a disaster kind of scenario.
Right.
So coming specifically to the pandemic, like Avez mentioned, Tiwari also mentioned, all of us have one or other kind of remote working facility already in place, though not used in an extensive manner. So that actually helped us to scale up.
Right.
Regarding the COVID-related pandemic, if we say, all of us know that since last, that is 2019 December onwards, there were various kind of media publicity or kind of information which were available through various channels that this pandemic initiated in China and it is gradually spreading to other countries.
Right.
And by early Jan, it was there in India also. So we also were keenly or very closely monitoring the situation in the country as well as within our environment, and we started preparing for that very early. We started scaling up our work from home or the VPN kind of infrastructure we are having.
Right.
So since we started very early, we could arrange adequate equipments. So there was a kind of logistics issue, as Vinay mentioned rightly, because everyone started procuring laptops. However, the kind of, since the VPN licenses and all of them are now cloud-based, and that kind of facility, scaling up of the VPN infrastructure was not at all a challenge. So the laptop procurement, since we started early, we could manage reasonably, and we could ensure that the business works as usual.
Right. I'll come
Yeah.
back.
So
yes.
Yeah. Sure.
Now I'll move to Mr. Prakash. Mr. Prakash, earlier Mr. Tiwari mentioned about that there has been a very good collaboration between BFSI organization and the private companies, and they actually help each other during the pandemic. Would you like to share your experience in terms of some trend movement that you have witnessed over the last 8-9 months?
Yeah, sure. I think thanks for the insight from the fellow panelists. I think last couple of months has been not great as far as humanity is concerned, but side by side, I can also say that it's a great time for people who have been in IT or in security, especially because the trend has been quite different. A lot of as couple of people have already highlighted, the shift has happened from organization to workforce. Now, workforce readiness from security perspective, it's not new. Every organization was already prepared.
Right.
The challenge that we had is how can an organization have a better visibility to, first of all, have a serious look at what is the productivity of these employees who are working from home, and secondly, how they are keeping them motivated. Technology was already there. If you pick up any endpoint, or for that matter any laptop or end machine, it was already loaded with endpoint protection, data security product lines. It also already has those VPNs and all. So it was there with Aves and all. Everything was already there. The challenge came in is when you have your workforce increase multifold. Earlier, if you had only 5% of people working from home, suddenly the spike was there. From 5%, it went to 70-75%.
Right.
Now, the load came on the infrastructure. The load came on an organization from a visualization perspective. The load came on in terms of finding out whether you are able to enforce and track the policy from security perspective or not. So these are the operational challenges which came in. I don't think it was majorly from security perspective. Now, challenge is there if you don't have a right visibility. It means if things are happening, which is kind of an anomaly in your setup, that will trigger into an incident, and that incident can convert into kind of a breach. That has created bigger problem for large organization, and I'm sure fellow panelists will also agree on that. And I think we have seen a massive growth, especially on e-commerce platform. Now, e-commerce platform can be correlated to a transactions on digital platform also. When you see a lot of transactions happening on e-commerce, it means credit card transactions will go up, digital payment will happen. So again, it's going to bring a lot of load on the BFSI segment where the transition is going on. We have seen a couple of data points that clearly says that almost 80% of the people were very scared to visit their branches. And out of those people, I think 50% people will remain using the digital platform to transact with their banks. So these are major shifts, and in terms of security, in terms of taking care of those kind of transactions in terms of millions, and then building capacity. I think there is a shift in terms of how large organization is going to leverage on cloud. That's a clear shift we are seeing. So whatever growth in cloud we have witnessed in the last 7 years, the same growth we are seeing globally that has happened in the last five to 6 months. And I'm sure this trend is going to keep on in coming months also.
Right. I'll pick on your response only, and we'll go to Mr. Avez. Mr. Prakash was mentioning about having the better visibility across your end infrastructure and the people who are working from home, what they are doing, how secure your data are. And I mean, from a very general perspective, we know that having a visibility across your compute, storage, and networking infrastructure is really important. I would like to understand from you, Mr. Avez, has that visibility that you had in pre-COVID era, has that reduced? Have you seen any change on the visibility front?
To begin, I think three, four very important takes from all the fellow panel members. In fact, Mr. Jyoti Prakash mentioned about having a shift from organizational readiness to workflow readiness, and Mr. Reddy spoke around having a gear shift in the strategy in how we are trying to put in perspective at things. Mr. Tiwari mentioned about that the technological leverage which the employees have received during the pandemic period, during the lockdown period, people now want to retain them all.
Yes.
Right. And a lot of people who don't want to give up their temporary VPN connections, temporary VDI connections. Now everybody wants the makeshift desktops, the laptops which we have given them. And most of the people are asking for work from home scenarios. From a security point of view, and I think all the CISOs over here will agree to me, is from a data security point of view, you are still under the bit of darkness that what happens to my data. But there you completely have to believe on, and you are going on the culture side of an organization. How strongly you have created a risk culture within the organization, because certain risk you will have to live with. You cannot put technology to take care of 100% of your risk. Otherwise, it will be a failure of risk management. Risk management makes sure that you also take certain amount of risk, and that's where building up culture comes into place. And I think every organization's HR, L&D team, CISOs departments have done an amazing job in terms of scaling up this message to the people that what all moral expectations we have from you. And a simple example, if I have to give you, we have been doing phishing simulations for the last so many years. And this year's simulation results is completely outstanding. People, 90% of the people, they reported simulation, reported on this phishing mails which we have tried to artificially generate. 90% is a huge amount where people report. Earlier, people used to see it as a phishing mail, but they used to ignore it. Right now, people are reporting it. So people are becoming more very much proactive and want to participate. From a visibility point of view, I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but I don't see any challenge from an IT infrastructure visibility point of view. Yes, there are certain areas which needs to be worked around, and we have to keep technology, people, and process linked together so that we have a proper visibility in place.
Mr. Tiwari, would you like to add on the part of visibility that Avez and Mr. Prakash mentioned, that as far as IT infrastructure is concerned, you do have a visibility around your computer storage and networking, and then you have to take some risk, which is inherent. I mean, you have to trust your employee. Obviously, you have to do that. What would be your thoughts on that, sir?
Yeah, I agree with the visibility actually remains same. So it depends on what kind of remote access architecture you have. If you are remaining with the same infrastructure going on VDIs, the visibility for security monitoring will remain same because the integrations will remain same. The only thing is your policies with respect to monitoring will in fact increase. So that will give you a lot of visibility. So the use cases which were driven were not restricted only for a security monitoring perspective. There were certain expectations from HR for productivity monitoring, and in fact the tools which were implemented for productivity monitoring were also giving more input rather than earlier visibilities. Okay, And there were a lot of thought process around the application piece as well, considering the privacy and the access to the endpoint users. So there are a lot of restrictions around that. Accesses were, for example, given on a time-based basis as well. So wherever it was required or it was mandatory. There were certain migrations in the industry which we had seen, which went to cloud for VDI perspective, but that's where non-critical system or non-critical infrastructure were given for processing. So there were a lot of movement or a lot of changes were seen with respect to, for example, moving on proxy perspective, right? So from on-site to people have moved to cloud as well, right? To ensure that the processing is distributed, it's not restricted or centralized at the VPN gateway or maybe the VDI gateway per se. So those integrations were challenged during that days, but I think those were the prerequisites. So earlier, what used to happen, the system used to get implemented and then later on certain implementations were there. Here, the monitoring was the first thing which was getting implemented. Not only that, apart from pandemic, the geopolitical situation were also heating up at that time. So that demanded a lot of exposure in terms of what is happening on the perimeter. Not only restricted to our environment, what is happening on the dark web, what is happening on maybe on a DDoS perspective, whatever certain things were coming up from certins or maybe RBSC sites or so. So in fact, the visibility is increasing day by day, and that demand is being supported even by the IT system in terms of capacity and all. So that's not getting restricted. The only thing is, so whether you are on a legacy system, whether you are on a fully automated, as I said, the digital bank, wherein certain things are automatically in the framework itself. Yeah.
I want to second the thought of Mr. Tiwari, because I think visibility has increased rather than it has been at the constant. Because earlier the things which we used to do intuitively, now we are doing it a very formal, structured way, and we are trying to explore more areas whether and to be double sure whether things are going right or wrong. So I think I agree with what Mr. Vinay said.
Mr. Reddy, would you like to add your thoughts on the visibility part? Especially earlier you mentioned that things are moving to the edge, and therefore you need to have a broader understanding of your different parts within business.
Yeah, absolutely. See, the way you look at in your organization, something is happening. You are. I mean, you can easily see and you can easily protect. Once you extend your access, work from home or work from anywhere, see, there is a challenge now. Challenge in the sense you know your endpoint, because that laptop has been provided by you. You know the posture of the laptop, but the connectivity which connected that laptop during that connectivity is one of the weakest thing which is not a part of your network at all, and you don't know whether the employee is taking care of the security like encryption, like misuse of that device, physical security, whether he has properly kept or not. So all these things are a real challenge, because we don't know what kind of environment is operating his laptop, though he is getting access to our bank access to our system, but we don't have much visibility on his connectivity part. That is one of the challenge which and which is the one of the weakest kind of security control as far as this work from home concerned. And beyond that also there is a challenge, the people, the employees who are inside the office, their behavior and their kind of engaging with the laptops and all these things are under a controlled environment. When they are accessing from home, there is less visibility whether they are operating in a very secured environment or not, or the kind of access which they are doing is secured or not. So all these things are there, but still banks have, the organization have gone to certain maturity. They have adopted the session monitoring and keeping a awareness bulletin time to time, keeping a close watch and keeping a keeping a video calling, understanding them, are you protecting yourself and protecting your gadgets or not. So all those challenges are there, and these are part of the access which we have to control. Yeah.
Right. I'll come back to you again. I'll move to Mr. Biju. Mr. Biju, what Mr. Reddy was mentioning that in terms of the IT technology, you do have technology available that gives you visibility, but because of pandemic, there has been some pilferage on the visibility part. And what Avez is saying is that you need to take some risk. There's nothing called silver bullet, 100% security. I mean, you have to take some risk actually, and at times you have to actually believe people, your employee to whom you're giving access at home to work on various projects. In that light, would you like to add your views around visibility part?
Yeah, sure. I agree to what both of them said. So we have to take risk. At the same time, we have to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data from a security perspective also. So we all have to accept the change in environment, the way we are now working in the pandemic era. So while extending the work from home facility, compared to the earlier practices, we have to improve from the monitoring perspective, from the control perspective.
Right.
So in addition to what both Reddy and Vinay and others mentioned, some other important points what we have to look at is the kind of access we are providing to the employees who work from home, whether it is employee or a supporting vendor or a partner.
Right.
Compared to the environment where they work from office, like Mr. Reddy correctly mentioned, the mentality of a person when they work in office, whereas compared to when they work from a closed room in their house, it can be different. It may not be, but can be. So while extending work from home, it is very essential that the basic principle of the least privileges is implemented for all users. That is both the role-based access as well as the other kind of privileges given to the employee or the person who is allowed to connect from his home or from another place needs to be strictly controlled and needs to be on the very minimal side. Then additionally, we need to have some additional monitoring scenarios like the location from where the connection is getting established. So though it's the bank's device, there can be some attacks in that name if the credentials are somehow compromised or something like that. So we need to closely monitor the locations, that is a geo tagging kind of monitoring scenarios are also very much essential in this era.
I'll come back to you again. I'll move to Mr. Prakash. Mr. Prakash, we keep on hearing the word enterprise grade security, especially in times of the work from home. Organizations are actually trying very hard to provide enterprise grade security to the employee, secure their data. I would like to understand from you, because you have worked across various organizations. Is it really possible, given the fact that banks are huge organizations, some of them may be 100-year-olds, they have invested a lot of money in traditional IT infrastructure. And when you are extending some part of yours to the edge and to the work from home environment, where you have the limited control, how do we ensure that there is some level, we are able to provide enterprise grade securities?
Thanks. That's a very difficult and it's a great question. Trust me, and I think fellow panelists will definitely add their value. See, my perspective is different. When I see these kind of scenario, I look at it from two perspectives. One, as a consumer, when I go and start transacting online and I take leverage on the digital platform, it means there is an evolution in me as a consumer, right?
Right.
And same thing happens from the other side. Whether you take any vertical, you talk about e-commerce platform, you talk about banking transactions, you talk about online transaction, whatever. The readiness has to be there, and the evolution will also be there. And as I mentioned earlier, also when you have say 70% of the people transacting on branch are shifting their approach towards digital. That's an evolution from both sides. There will be a bit of a change which is required from policy, from framework, from infra, from way you track those transactions.
All right.
See, today it's a very data-centric business policy that any organization can enforce. Now, data can see couple of years back, whether you take a security as a domain or IT as a domain or a DevOps as a domain, everybody was very protective in terms of identifying that this is the set of data which is relevant to me. And everybody used to build their own silos of technology, and then they used to build their own, I would say, castle. And then that was not a cross leverage which was happening earlier. But with this kind of evolution, what we have seen in the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years, the whole scenario is cutting across multiple verticals. It means data is becoming much more relevant. And when you are storing a data, or when you are capturing a data, you can use that data to bring some security sense out of that, to figure it out what it means from your IT infra perspective. You can run your scan and run your multiple other tools to get some business insight, which can give you a trend in terms of what is the behavior change in the customers that you already have for the last 1 decade. Right. Are they shifting their behavior pattern towards the way they are transacting with you? Is there a makeshift? This requires lot of change, policy, framework, whatever we have. Right. This is a continuous process, and I'm sure, as I said, all panelists will agree with me. There will be a lot of delta which these people will keep on adding up, which will help us, move forward with the changing dynamics of doing business in this whole world. Right. I think that's where it makes much more sense that when you are capturing a data, capture it once, and try to use it and scan it and make relevance out of it with the lens that you're going to use. If you are using a security lens, take the security lens and have a serious look at the data. If there is a business guy, he will use a business lens and have a serious look at that data. That data can give you multiple, I would say output, multiple direction, and it will help you take a right decision. More data, it means you'll be more logical, you'll be more rational, and it will help you take right decisions. Otherwise, it will be like too much of an assumption will be there.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are in the last leg of this panel discussion. So last question I'll be asking each one of you. Mr. Avez, based on your 8-9 month experience, what should be 2-3 hardcore focus of CISO down the line in 6 to 1 year, if I have to ask you, sir?
We'll have to create a push for a reliable cyber ecosystem. When we talk about the workforce moving from organization to moving to offices, so we'll have to create a very reliable cyber ecosystem which takes care of this particular area as well. Because currently, whatever ecosystem is being created, to be very honest, we never thought that the scale of remote working will ever happen in our own lifespans. So now it has happened as a black swan. So we'll have to create a entire new ecosystem. And as I also said, we'll also need to create a new doctrine for incident management. Right. If in case an incident happened, because the current doctrine or current BCP which we have, or current business continuity, the tabletop exercises which we do in terms of crisis management, it all fits into the perimeter environment. Now, a perimeter completely being exhausted, you need to have a new doctrine around incident management and coordination mechanism point of view. And the last part of thing, I think we should identify, which a lot of my colleagues mentioned, which Mr. Reddy also mentioned, that knowing your customers, knowing your employees, knowing your data, knowing your application, knowing your everything around. It's very important that you now get to know about your vendors, because vendor risk management is also becoming a new area in terms of both resilience management, business continuity management, cybersecurity management. And now with data privacy coming into probably January, February in the winter session, we'll have the data privacy bill coming into for our country. So from that point of view, the vendor risk management should be another area which the CISO should look into and try to identify those 30-40 parameters where will they rank a vendor from not only from a technological point of view, from a risk management and security point of view. Right. Conventionally, vendors are gauged on the basis of their cybersecurity standards, but we should go one step ahead in terms of resilience and business continuity management as well as data protection.
Right.
That's my three
Mr. Tiwari, would you like to add your views? What should be the couple of key focus for the CISOs down the line?
While I understand cybersecurity controls for unbanked, there are certain framework already in place, but I strongly feel privacy is going to be an integral thing with respect to implementation of cybersecurity as well, because privacy can be achieved only through certain access controls or encryptions, or maybe certain hashing or tokenization or synchronization kind of solutions. So next big thing which is coming up, even for CISOs, while they may not be directly responsible or accountable for it, is going to be on a privacy piece, because whatever inherent risk we identified as part of this pandemic or work from home scenario, the major thing was with respect to privacy only. That was leading to data leakage perspective.
Right.
Second, which we are observing is, as someone rightly pointed out earlier from the panel, so the things are going to be moving, or the processing are going to be moving independently, maybe on cloud setup per se. So there you will see a lot of movement of centralization of data that will be happening, though it will be centralized in terms of your infrastructure. The processing will be distributed. So that kind of engagement we are expecting. So security controls accordingly will change. For example, cloud coming into picture, there are a lot of challenges with respect to integration or monitoring of the cloud system itself. The roles and responsibilities of the CISO function, or maybe the cybersecurity function, how we are differentiating with the IT function. Third, I'm seeing a lot of architectural changes that may come up in the application itself. I'm seeing a lot of edge devices or BYOD kind of environment which will be coming up shortly, and those will be the challenging areas wherein CISOs will have to focus. And no doubt, all the threat attacks, be it ransomware, spear phishing, wishing, Jamtaras, and all kind of new areas, Mohalis also needs to be addressed. So
Right.
that will be
Mr. Reddy, would you like to add your views? What would be a couple of areas that you feel CISO will have to really focus on?
Yeah, the CISO's role has changed now. He has to play a twin role now.
Right.
He has to look after cyber security, as well as he has to ensure the business continuity.
Right.
Because the security become the prime layer for the IT to operate. See, if IT operates, then the business will function. So the security become the primary layer right now. Without that security layer, nothing, your IT and business cannot function. So since this is the priority, security is a priority now. So it has to be ensured that you have to you have to set your basics right now.
Right.
Like your basic, the security principles, like your policy, your frameworks, your standards, process, your strategy, and your risk mitigation controls, where you are somewhere you are, heightening your access. So at the same time, when you are heightening your access and you want to maintain the same level of comfort to the user, with putting more security controls in place, and at the time you should ensure that if you are giving a comfort to the user with more security controls, that means your basics should be in place. That means your all the security posture at all level you should maintain. It should be sustainable. It should not come down to a certain level where business will compromising something. Business should not go into this. So the security is the top priority, and at the same time, it has to be ensured that your business should also go well.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Biju, a couple of speakers mentioned about privacy part, especially we have that data bill pending in the parliament, most likely to be tabled in January. So do you see even the privacy getting added as one of the component for the CISO? I mean, that responsibility?
Yeah, that's a tricky question actually. So, in my opinion, the direct responsibility for the privacy may not be with CISO, because that being more in the nature of legal and compliance nature. But having said that, a privacy issue can happen due to lack of adequate security.
Right.
So that very well it will become the responsibility of the CISO. So in the new environment, the chances of data leakage or the breach of confidentiality, the chances are becoming more and more. Like the adoption of cloud is increasing day by day. Similarly, the dependency on third parties, that can be vendors, partners, and fintechs. So there is sharing of data at all these levels. So we need to ensure that wherever the data is processed or captured, the level of security is the same, whether it is irrespective of the place of capture or the place of storage. Also, when there is a cloud subscription, we need to ensure that on an ongoing basis the security controls are in place. So that will be a big challenge in the coming days, because the usage is steadily increasing.
Right, right.
I think there has to be a lot of synergy between the CISO's department and the privacy department. But my view is, sorry to put in between, but my view is there has to be a segregation of duty, because both of them are very critical going forward into an organization, and both being with one person, I think it doesn't justify.
Yes, yes.
So will
There
definitely
will be a
play
symbiotic relation with both of them.
Yes. CISO and compliance will play a very important role, but definitely the privacy officer should be completely segregated identity.
Absolutely. Mr.
Yeah,
Prakash, based on the last 8-9 months, the kind of trend that we have witnessed, in your view as a business leader, what should be the 2-3 key priorities for the cybersecurity leader across this country?
I think cloud came out as a clear winner in this discussion, and also elsewhere globally, the trend that we are seeing.
Right.
I would definitely like to establish that most of the cloud players, and I'm talking about leading cloud players in this space,
right,
who have been in this space for very long, and their controls are very stringent in terms of global standards.
right.
So cloud platforms are quite ready. I think they will be in a better position to extend services to most of the customers who are trying to build their own data center or whatever they are going to leverage with local SIs or what. So cloud is going to be there, and that's a major shift. Whether we like it or not, where there has been a lot of resistance internally or not, it's going to happen. Whether it's going to take another 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, but I'm sure within this decade, we are going to see a massive shift in cloud, because otherwise the capacity and the scale up which is required for the change and the evolution of the business which is happening, it will not be able to sustain. There has been a clear prediction that in next 5 years, either a company will be a digital plus
right.
doing their own business, or they'll not even survive. So it's kind of a digital company in a banking vertical, a digital company in a manufacturing vertical. That's the way the definition of the industries are happening. Workforce, even a lot of announcement has came in from large IT companies from India as well. And again, I'm not quoting global examples, where the announcement is quite clear that in next 5 years, the objective is to make sure that at least 70% of the workforce keep on working from home.
Right.
That's a very big statement coming out from one of the most tech savvy organization with more than 1 lakh of an employee base.
Right.
So that's a clear trend, and everything is going to follow that the same way. So for CISOs, I think as I said, the panelists are more qualified than me in terms of sharing their view. But for me, the way I look at it, there will be an identity who will be trying to access the data, and there will be a data where you need to make sure that the combination and the connect or the bridge should be established, and it should be established in a right way. So right data going to the right hand is the biggest challenge that everybody in this in this industry will have to target. One last point I would like to make, that we have been following a trend of finding out the right fit for the company.
Right.
I think when you go for a right fit solution, they will be able to meet your current requirement. When you look for a best fit, that solution will not only meet your current requirement, but also it will take care of your future requirement. So I think that's a shift what we are seeing, and that trend is quite obvious in all the data points that you'll see from all the survey reports.
Right, right. We have completely exhausted our time, and with this, we come to the conclusion of this panel discussion. I once again thank you, Mr. Avez, Mr. Tiwari, Mr. Reddy, Mr. Biju, Mr. Prakash, for sharing your views and enlightening us with your thoughts as to what CISO should be doing down the line in 1 year, 6 months, and the kind of challenge that you people have faced over the last 8 months, and how you have ensured enterprise grade security for the work from home environment. Thank you so much once again for sharing your views. Thank you.
Thank you.
all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, panelists, for the wonderful session. Stay tuned.